Ankan Ma'at, beautiful people. I promised you the other day that I would speak on the topic of who is Heru and who is Heru's mother and father. Well, where I'm sitting right now, at my left is my mother. Her name is Ust or Set. But she was born in Quisqueya, now called Dominican Republic. And so I guess her name would be Madre, mother. This is on my right hand, right over my right shoulder, is my father. His name is Asar, James Hjorhes. James Wilkinson Hjorhes. And I got his name as a junior when I was a boy. But as I began to study what my father pointed me to, and you all can check back and look at some of my interviews, and I speak about this a million times, how my father brought me up on the concept of this young boy king, King Tutankhamen, and the impression that made on me. So I began to study everything I could about the history of these Nile Valley Africans. And so the most important story for any one of us who is getting into this knowledge, you've got to know the story of Heru. You've got to know the story of Heru's father, Asar, and Heru's mother, Ust. Now, when you read the Egyptological books, you'll find their names to be Isis for the mother, and Osiris for the father, and of course the son, Heru, they call Horus. Many English-speaking people take the name Horus, H-O-R-A-C-E. Even the word horoscope contains the word Heru. The word horizon contains the word Heru. So you see, and it always has something to do with the rising sun, okay? But we want to get into what did our legacy say about the personality of this young hero? Why was Heru born? And what is Heru's mission? So as we come into this knowledge and we study the template, because that's what this symbolic story really is. It's a template for repairing your consciousness, for reclaiming a way of thinking that was lost due to many of the unfortunate issues we brought upon ourselves by our own violation of Ma'at that other people took advantage of and came in and exploited our divisions and finally conquered. But being conquered doesn't mean that we are going to stay conquered forever. If we raise the Heru in us, we will become victorious over those forces that want to keep us down. Now, perhaps some people say, well, if you were so great, how did you fall? Well, it's only natural that all things that rise naturally fall. But as far as our story is concerned, it seems as if the Nile Valley Africans had a civilization that lasted longer than any other civilization on earth for which we have records, okay? The Nile Valley culture. And their sacred writing, which they call hieroglyphics today, which in Latin means sacred writing, we call them metu, neter, metu meaning words and neter meaning the divine, which some people refer to as God. I don't like to use that patriarchal Gothic word. I prefer to use the word neter or nter. See, I get a little esoteric about it. But let's get back to this story of Heru. Who is Heru? But first, before I even begin, I want you to do this with me. Say, as Heru, I am strong. As Heru, I am mighty. As Heru, I will make it happen. Now, the instructive word there is will, because Heru is the hero within each and every one of us. Heru represents your will to do and to be. Webster's Encyclopedic Dictionary refers to the will as the faculty of consciousness and deliberate action. You heard that? It's a faculty of consciousness and deliberate action. In other words, once you come into awareness of who you are, once you become aware of the hero within you, then you must take action. You see, just to study and to read books and to look at things on YouTube and to sit back and drink a beer and go to sleep does not awaken the Heru within you. You've got to begin to put some of Heru's behaviors into practice. Now, what was Heru's mission? According to the legacy, and you can find this story in so many places. I'm not even going to bother you by quoting sources. Go look for them yourself. Many of us have become too lazy. You want everything handed to you on a silver platter. I'm not that elder who's going to give it to you on a silver platter. You're going to work for this. But I'm going to be as kind as I can and give you as much as I can so you'll have something to chew on as you go deeper into studying and into researching for your own edification. So that you won't just blame me if I'm wrong, and so Baaba Heru taught me that way. No, no, no. If I'm wrong, then you show me where I'm wrong, and I will be happy to correct myself because my ego is not involved. I want us to get this because it's the one missing piece that we don't have because they will not teach you this in school. It's not until you go to college that they teach you these subjects of comparative literature, comparative religions, and so on, comparative culture, that you will even stumble upon the Nile Valley concept of Heru. And even then, they will try to pretend that it's something other than African. It's something that was really began in the so-called Middle East. That's the place they try to move that Nile Valley culture into the so-called Middle East. A really amorphous place. It doesn't exist anywhere. Where's the Middle South? Where's the Middle North? Where's the Middle West? Please. Look. Heru is called upon to have and to develop a strong will. And they say that the power of will resides in your gonads. In other words, you got to have some balls. Because to take this legacy back, to take the Christ-ship, oh yes, Heru is the Christ within you that you have got to resurrect and awaken. And guess what? You've got help. You've got help awakening this consciousness. It was given to you in a template by your beloved father Asar. Because when you visit Ipet Aisut, the place now called Karnak, where the temple of Amun-Ra resides, you will see all over on the temple walls there's the legend of Asar. How Asar was murdered and cut into 14 pieces, and how his wife and her sister Nebuchadnezzar, his wife asked and her sister Nebuchadnezzar put his body together back again and resurrected Asar. And when Heru came into his own, when he became an adult, his mother told him what his mission was. As a matter of fact, she kept telling him what his mission was, even while he was young. And therefore, Heru then claimed the mantra, Heru nech ratef mut. Heru nech ratef henamut. Heru avenges the wrongs done to his mother and father. Now, a lot of wrong was done to the legacy of our beloved mother and fathers of the Nile. The story of Ast and Asar, which they call Isis and Osiris, was substituted, and we were given another man and woman, Adam and Eve, in the King James Version. That is the version of the brothers, of the cousins of the Heru people, of the Nile Valley people. The Shemitic people, they give us their story, which I think they took from the Gilgamesh epic, and dealing with a flood, and that flood story, and how life started in the garden with Adam and Eve, and later they went against the laws of God and were destroyed. God killed them all in a flood, going against his own law, do not kill, and he drowned them all and had to start over again. Well, the story of Heru is a little different, but this is a story that you've got to know. If you don't know this, you will not have the foundation to reconstitute your consciousness and to dig deep into the subconscious where lies have been planted. And overcoming those lies is not easy, because as you come into this awareness of who Heru is, you're going to find members of your family, your friends, they're going to think that you're crazy. Oh yeah, he's woo-woo. Because you see, nobody told you that these stories, including the biblical stories, are merely templates for the reconstitution of your consciousness. But we African people must get this reconstitution of our consciousness from the template left by our own ancestors. not by visitors who came, who we were kind to according to their own book, how Abraham and Sarah came, we fed them, and they grew rich in cattle and land and went out richer than they came in. Not the story of Moses being taught in our temples and growing in wisdom and knowledge. Not the story of Yeshua, Jesus, whose mother Mary brought him into the land of Kemet, and how he inquired in our temples and became very wise and learned a lot about healing, because that's what we were about. We were healing people. Yeah, we were into herbs, like Van Jones said about, yes, yeah, those hoteps, they know all about the healing. They tell you to drink your green and you want to drink your Diet Pepsi. Well, Heru will not be drinking Diet Pepsi from now on. After this, you will learn that you cannot grow the hero in you. You cannot strengthen your will on Diet Coke and pizza pie, burgers and hot dogs, and none of that stuff, so-called food. That just is that's an insult to your beloved body temple. So Heru must cultivate a strong will to resist the habits that have been planted in the subconscious by way of our parents, grandparents, and I know it's not easy. Sometimes when you find the truth, you have to come and tell your parents, well, Mom and Dad, I found out such and such a thing. And we got to be so careful how we approach them, because when they find out that you know something that they don't, they're going to feel that they're losing parental authority. So you got to be very careful, very kind with your parents. You cannot come on disrespectful, trying to make your dad feel like he ain't nothing because you know now something that he don't know or never heard about. Remember, it was intended that you never find out about the story. That's why they hide it in a special place that they call Egyptology. And to get into the study of ancient African culture, which they now mislabeled Egyptology, you've got to learn German, because so much of the research has been done by Germans. You've got to read French. Mariette and so many of the people who came digging in the Nile were French. You've got to learn some Italian, because those Latin people were very up and down the Nile, digging up the bones, grinding up the sahu, which they now miscall mummy, of our ancestors, and all of that kind of stuff they were doing. So, to get this Heru energy is not easy, but you've got to persevere. And the first thing you've got to do is cultivate that strong will. So being Heru is synonymous with being victorious, because once you find out that Heru, in avenging the wrongs done to his mother and father, you have to understand why was Heru slated to avenge the wrong done to his mother and father. Well, let me give you the short version of the story. You can Google this, you can look it up in so many Egyptological books, this legend of Isis and Osiris and Horus and Set. And the battle between Heru and Set has been plagiarized and encoded in the movie called The Lion King. It's been stolen in Shakespeare's Hamlet and in other places like that. This same concept of Heru, of the young hero coming into avenging the wrongs done to his mother and father, that's a common theme in most of these stories, but they never will admit to its African source. Because you, African, should never know that you had a story before the one that was fed to you by those who raped your mamas on slave ships and on plantations. So until you really get this, you will be a slave forever. But guess what? Many elders have been working to dig this knowledge up, and it's your business to come and get it, because no one is going to hand you your crown. No one is going to give you your throne. You got to take it. And you take it silently, in here and here, in places where they cannot see it, but where they can feel its effect, because they cannot bamboozle you anymore with their stories that has nothing at all to do with your culture, that negates the Divine Mother principle especially. Oh, no, no, no. Heru, he defends his mama. He defends her throne. And that is what we're called upon to do. And you know something, my brothers, especially you young brothers out here, many of you, you have the ost at home, your mother. Daddy has been locked out by welfare and other things, in jail and other things like that. But your mama is trying to bring up a hero all by herself. And you got to help her. And you can make it easy by just embracing the will to be a hero to your mother and to be there for her and to defend her even against some of your own rudeness and disrespect. Okay? I'm an elder, so I'm going to talk like I'm spanking you. So you just got to take it. You got to deal with it. I'm sorry. Okay? So, once you know that now Heru is told, hey, Set, your uncle, killed your father. So that's what you've got to avenge, because your father was wrong by being murdered by his brother, his jealous brother. And by the way, the template of that story you'd find in the Bible, in the Cain and Abel story, in the Isaac and Jacob story. You'll find that story all over their books, but they never will tell you the true source of these stories, you see? But once you know that your African ancestors had something to do with it, then you're on surer ground, and then you can really defend your right to be Heru, to claim this knowledge and to do what Heru must do. So in avenging the wrongs done to Heru's mother and father, Heru has to now claim the foundation ethical code of Ma'at. And Heru was given 42 codes, ethical codes of Ma'at. And by the way, for the modern, for us modern people, we have likewise brought 42 new covenants that's going to go with the 42 ancestral covenants. So in all, we are going to have a whole lot of covenants to keep in order to reclaim our rightful place as the elders of this earth. Now, remember I told you how Heru's father Asa was a gardener and a farmer. And he went around teaching to others the techniques of gardening and growing crops and how to tend the soil and how to irrigate the fields. And he was so successful, and he used music in order to convince the people to change some of their wicked ways. He was slaughtering animals, leaving their carcasses to dry as they just took some of the innards and roasted it over fires and things like that. But Asa said, no, you all have to be more, you got a bit more finesse than that. You can't be just destroying animals and eating their flesh like that. You got to grow some green things to move that stuff through your stomach, because our ancestors were very much into taking care of the body. The temples that they built were almost templates or skeleton structures of the body temple. Because when you entered into a temple of stone, you were actually entering into the temple of your own consciousness, of your own body, and its upkeep. That's why I say if you go to church, when you enter that church, you had better be thinking of what am I going to do to improve my health so I can be a better servant of the Lord, if that's what you want to be. Well, you can't be a servant of the Lord if you're obese. If you're going to go to heaven in the pews and hell in the kitchen, no, you can't do that, you see. So we're going to share with you how after Asar came back from teaching these things to the people, his brother grew very jealous because of his popularity. And so he decided that he's going to play a trick on Asar. And so he built a beautiful, beautiful wooden coffin with jewels all around it. And when Asar came back, him and 72 conspirators got together and they had a great party. And at the end of the party, people are drinking and having fun and eating all this wonderful food. And they rolled out a coffin that was made to fit one person. But everybody decided, let's try see who we can fit in this coffin. So we're laughing and merriment. People jump into the coffin, jumped out. Some couldn't even get near the coffin, couldn't even get one leg in the coffin. Well, that's not really so, because we were not into obesity in those days. But the coffin didn't fit anybody except when Asar, being the last one to get in there, oh boy, here came Set and his conspirators, and they put the lid on, and Asar suffocated it, threw molten lead around it and sealed him in, and he was done. And Set took it and hid it by the bulrushes. And at some point when the tides rose, that coffin with the body of Asar floated out to an island of Byblos, now in modern-day Lebanon. And it got caught up in the roots of a tree, and a king who was sailing, the king of Byblos was sailing, and he said, wait a minute, that's a beautiful coffer. And some children playing by the river shore told his beloved wife Ast, who went looking for this coffer with her body, with her husband's body in it, that a king had taken the whole coffer and took it to his palace and made it as a pillar in the very center of his palace. So Asar's wife and consort, decided that she's going to go to the palace of this king and retrieve the body of her husband. But in order to do so, she had to trick the king and his wife into believing that she was just a nursemaid. And so the queen's wife had a beautiful young son, and Asar being hired as a nursemaid, she was known as Urt Hekau, a great lady of magic, and actually spiritual effective actions. Because the word magic is a bit pejorative, make people think, woo, woo, woo. No, that she was a sorceress and all this kind of lies that they tell about our African story. The fact is that when she told the king who she really was, and because she had to confess, because as the nursemaid of the king's son, she was passing him over the fire, trying to get him to be immortal. And his wife, the wife of the king, saw Ast doing this ritual with her little baby, and she screamed and broke the spell. And she told her husband, the king, get this woman out of our palace. So Ast told the king, my husband is in that casket, and I am really the queen of a nation that is much larger than yours. And you know the nation of Smai-Tawi. This is what they used to call the Nile Valley Nation before people split it up into the name Kemet and Tameri and Kush and Kenset and Taneter and all these lands. It was once one great nation known as the United Two Regions, North and South. The Egyptologists refer to it as Upper and Lower Egypt. Anyway, it came to pass, that's a favorite word when you tell a story, it came to pass that that when Ast brought the coffin back to Kemet and she hid it by some bulrushes. You hear that story, that word bulrush? Sounds like the Moses story, don't it? Anyway, Set was out hunting by the light of the moon, and he found, oh my gosh, I thought this chest with my brother's remains had floated out to sea. But here it is again. This is magical. How did it get? And he was so angry, he ripped the coffin open. He took the body of his brother Asar, and he split it up into 14 pieces, and he scattered it all over the nation. But the henanum, which they call penis or phallus today, I don't know why we call it that, because it means tail in Latin. We don't have no tail. This is real. And it ain't in our back, it's in our front. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, Asar, Set now is going to think that he's going to get away with this, but guess what? Ast and her sister, they found every piece. They took Anpu, the jackal, and Anpu, being very keen of smell, was able to sniff the ground over where each part of Asar's body was buried, and Ast and her sister Nebuchadnezzar brought all the pieces together. And they couldn't find the henanum because it was swallowed by the fish, because it was thrown in the river. So that means that for the whole of that age, ruled by the fish, we have not known our reproductive power as a nation, as a people. Because this story, the template that we need for reconstituting our consciousness, has been hidden. And when it's been told just like a fairy tale. It don't mean anything. It's just a fairy tale. It's a comic book story. No. This story of Heru is the one that every king and queen of this ancient Nile Valley culture knew about. Okay? And it is what gave them the blueprint, or I would say the dark print, for reconstituting a consciousness of victory. And so after Asar's body was put together again, then Nebuchadnezzar, she went at his head after they laid his body out, and Ast was at his feet, and Nebuchadnezzar was fanning Asar with her wings, and he caught the breath of life, and Ast transformed herself into a female falcon and flew over his navel where this organ was jutting out from, and she took the spirit of the seed of Heru into her womb. And sure, 10 moons later, here comes Heru, the young warrior hero, who's going to be given a mission to undo the wrongs done to his mother and father. So sisters and brothers, that story is a symbolic story that you can use to develop the attitude and the will of Heru to right the wrongs done to your ancient legacy, to your ancient African ancestors who were cut into many pieces and put on board a slave ship, whose power to regenerate their own nation was lost for the whole of the Piscean Age. Remember, I told you the Henanum, the penis, was swallowed by a fish. That's the Piscean Age. For the last 2,000 some odd years, we as a people have not known power, real power in the world. Okay? But not until you reclaim a consciousness of the hero will you get your power back. If you keep on playing victim, well, we were enslaved. Well, guess how that happened? Because just like over here in Turtle Island, over there in Africa, we all were fighting each other. A lot of fratricidal wars between the chiefs, okay, and the losers were enslaved, okay, and then here came some people who say they pray so many times a day and who love the Most High and who believe in life. Yeah, they're going to cut your balls off, they're going to rape your women, and they're going to take your children and smash their heads up against the walls, okay, and they're going to give you their religion, okay? And some of you are still trapped in there to this day, right? So you're losing your power as Heru because you do not know this story in order to overcome the indoctrination of those who have enslaved your ancestors. So you see, you got work to do, Heru. So when I tell this story, and I can go on and on because the story has so many nooks and crannies, but I don't want to spend all that time. It'll be up to you to check the story out in all the various sources and books that they have out there. The main thing that you're going to get of what you got to do, what this story compels you to do, is to live a life of truth, of harmony, of justice, of reciprocity, of order, of propriety, of sobriety, and of decency. Those are the components of this ancient word that we know as Ma'at. To us, Ma'at is that which is right. To the moderns, might, M-I-G-H-T, to them is right. But to us, the ethical code of Ma'at is what is right. So now there are people who are claiming that they were the ancient Kemetic people. Well, they never said they were the ancient Kemites because the word Kem means black. They're going to say they were the ancient Egyptians, and in that we agree. They Egypted. Try to pretend that it was their ancestors who built this culture and this civilization. No. Your shepherd uncles were the recipients of the knowledge of these people. So you see, my beloved brothers and sisters, I've given you a little bit of what it takes to be Heru. I'm going to continue some more, filling out this story in other days to come. But for now, I just want to pause right there because it's not too good to be overfed. You need a moment to digest, to masticate, and let all the juices flow so that you'll be nourished by your thoughts when you wake up the next day. So I want to thank you, Tuauntera, Unk and Ma'at, you beautiful, beautiful sunshine people. Hetepo.